Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday As-Bill season meeting. This is a main share meeting, and today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Yisrael C. from Jerusalem, who's come to share for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for general sharing or if you'd like to ask a question. Thank you, Yisrael. It's wonderful to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you very much. Thanks for your service, and thanks to Young for asking me to be here, though it's always a little suspect. You got to wonder about the speakers that the speaker seeker asks to share and then doesn't show up for. You know, it could just be that I'm a dud and he didn't want to waste an hour while I chattered on about whatever it is that I'm about to talk about. I'm kidding, of course. I know that Young is traveling and would be here if he could be. I have a yappy dog in the background, so I will do my best to get him to shush, and hopefully he will. We'll do what we have to do. So first and foremost, let me say that my name is Yisrael, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I'm a member of the Mediterranean group. We meet on Wednesdays. I'm gonna Marsh. Stop. Come here. He's going to find that sitting with me is less fun than barking, and he'll change his mind, I hope, about barking. The Mediterranean group also meets on Zoom. We meet on Wednesday evenings, 9 p.m. Jerusalem time, which is 7 p.m. London time, 2 p.m. New York, 11 a.m. Los Angeles. Anywhere else in the world, you'll have to do your own math. I have been sober since the 14th of February, 1980. I celebrated 45 years of continuous sobriety at the beginning of the middle of February of this year, a few months ago. I will be 62 years old on Friday, this coming Friday, May 2nd, which means that I've been sober somewhere around 3/4 of my life. I've been, while we're throwing out the math statistics, I have been, I got sober in February of 1980, and AA turned 45 in June of 1980, and I turned 45 in February, and AA will be 90 in June. So I've been sober for half, roughly, of AA's existence. And the reason I chose this topic, well, first let me just qualify briefly. I picked up my first drink when I was 9 years old. I like to think that I waited. And I say that I waited because I could have used a drink any day of my entire life. As far back as I remember, now I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if what I'm about to say is medically true. I don't know if fear, anxiety, self-obsession, self-centeredness can be passed through breast milk. But if it can, it was in my case. Because as far back as I remember, that is the way I felt. And when I picked up that drink, all of that was immediately alleviated. On that first night of drinking, I was fearless. I had no anxiety. I really wasn't self-centered in the way that I had been my entire life. And it was a spiritual experience. It was nothing short of a spiritual experience. It was everything that the book describes that will be given to us as a result of working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in our life, I was given as a result of picking up a drink of alcohol. It was very much for me what the words Dr. Young uses to describe Roland Hazard's drinking in the letters that he exchanged with Bill in the early 1960s. He says his craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, the union with God. In other words, what I hear Dr. Young saying about Roland Hazard's drinking, and just so that we get everyone onto the same page, no worries. Just, Natasha, just give me a 5-minute warning, okay? Great. No worries about the timer. I wasn't really going to watch it anyway. I only pretend. any speaker worth their salt gives no credit or credence, I should say, to the timer. Anyway, Roland Hazard was a young American. He's described in the big book as a businessman, as a certain American businessman. And what we learn about Roland Hazard is that his parents sent him to Switzerland to be treated by Dr. Carl Jung. This dog's going to drive me crazy. And what happened there is he did a lot of work with Carl Jung, and then he came home to America and he was drunk almost immediately. He returned to Dr. Jung and he said, "Is there nothing we can do?" And basically, Dr. Jung thought to himself, "No, there is nothing we can do." But Roland Hazard found the Oxford groups and got sober. He helped Ebby Thatcher get sober. Ebby Thatcher, of course, is the man that brought the message to Bill Wilson. He's the guy who showed up bright-eyed, and Bill asked him, "What's gotten into you?" And he said, "I've got religion." He had a spiritual experience. There was no such thing as a spiritual experience then. It was all in the form of religion. Bill gets sober. For some reason, we don't count the founding of AA to be when Bill gets sober. When Ebby brings him the message, we only count the founding of AA to be some 6 months later when Bob gets sober on June 10th, 1935. And that's what alcohol was for me. The same thing that Dr. Carl Jung says it was for Roland. It was a spiritual experience, and so that's what I believe we need to have in order to recover from alcoholism. I'll say it one more time, and then I promise I'll stop. Alcohol was a spiritual experience that was, though Dr. Jung calls it a low-level spiritual experience, it was effective, but it came at great cost. The example I like to give is that, plenty of people who are overweight start running, and they lose a lot of weight. And that is an effective solution for losing weight until their knees give out, or one knee gives out, or their ankles, or their shin splints, or until something happens to them that causes them to have to stop running. That's what alcohol was. It was an effective spiritual experience to treat my alcoholism, which, of course, it's a misnomer to call it alcoholism, right? Because alcohol is the solution, not the problem. When I gave up the solution of alcohol, I needed a new solution. And for me, that has been the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the principles contained herein. I want to really address this first idea, this idea of spiritual kindergarten. I don't have the text in front of me. I'm sorry. If anyone could post what was read from, as Bill sees it, into the chat, I would greatly appreciate that. I would be able to see it and speak to it more clearly. But it's that first idea, spiritual kindergarten. I think it's an apt description of what we experience here, right? Let's think about it just metaphorically or analogously. I'm not really sure the word I should use. And just to be clear, I started drinking when I was 9. I stopped drinking when I was 16. I didn't drink for very long. You are not looking at the worst case of damage done by alcohol to an alcoholic in the history of AA. But that's not the important part. The important part is that what alcohol did for me was treat my spiritual malady. When I stopped drinking alcohol, I was left with my spiritual malady. And that's what AA has provided for me. Why not? I'll dip my toes into the fray. You heard several people, several of our readers, Natasha, describe themselves as recovered alcoholics. I don't know if I did or not, but if I were to have to describe myself, I would describe myself as a recovering alcoholic only for this reason. The book says that what we have recovered from is a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. That's what I recovered from at my very first meeting. First of all, it was only seemingly. I wasn't actually hopeless. I was only seemingly hopeless. And literally, I left my second meeting, really, for me, filled with hope that this would work for me. Anything that comes that easily and so long ago doesn't really seem to me to be trumpeted. But the other reason I don't say recovered is because recovered alcoholics, again, this is just the way I hear it and the way I interpret it. It may not be the way they mean to say it. It speaks to me that that the engagement is over, that the process is done. What the book clearly says, it clearly says several times that we're recovered alcoholics. I'll give you that. I think the only time it actually says what that means is the time that I quoted from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. But it also, in the 10-step promises, clearly says what we have not done is been cured of alcoholism. So I need to remember that. I need to remember that I have alcoholism today the same way I had alcoholism 45 years ago. Of course, I have 45 years of recovery between me and my last drink. Some of that's good, some of that's bad. That's debatable too. What I need to remember is that if I pick up a drink of alcohol, it will have the same or worse effect on me that it did 45 years ago when I stopped drinking. And what I need to remember is that untreated, I still have the spiritual malady. Untreated, I still have the underlying selfishness and self-centeredness that is spoken of in the book as being what's actually wrong with us. The book clearly says drinking is but a symptom, and what we have to get down to is causes and conditions. And that we suffer from 100 forms of selfishness and self-centeredness. So now to this idea of spiritual kindergarten. I think it's apt because when we first come to AA, I'll speak for myself, it was like kindergarten, right? Kindergarten, for a kindergartner, for a 5-year-old, is the most amazing place on earth. Everything they experience is mind-boggling wonderful, right? I mean, crayons. Are you fucking kidding me? Crayons? And finger paints? And nap time? And ketchup on everything that we eat? This is amazing. This is fabulous. I've never experienced anything so great in my entire life. But if I was to come back next year and be sent to kindergarten, well, that would suck. There'd be nothing new. Finger paints again? How much fucking ketchup are we going to eat? Right? Clean up this task before I get into that task? I would be... And imagine if you stayed in kindergarten for 45 years, right? You think finger paints were boring in year 2. Imagine how boring finger paints would be. Imagine trying to take a nap on that little cot. Imagine snack time. Imagine when parents pick up and you're sitting there and your parents are dead. And all the other parents are like, who's the fucking old guy in the corner? And they say, that's Yisrael. He was so enamored of spiritual kindergarten that he never left. Right? So, like, spiritual kindergarten, when you're in kindergarten, is amazing. It's the best. But it's just for 1 year. It's just, that's for the sake of our discussion and applying this principle to AA, this idea to AA, it's just for the time you're supposed to be in kindergarten, right? So you get here and everything is new and amazing and you can't believe it. And you're learning so much about yourself and your powerlessness and your unmanageability, and you come to believe in a power greater than yourself, and you turn your will and life over to the care of that God, and you realize, God, I've been stepping on people's toes left and right my whole life, right? I'm punching my way through this thing. There's no need. Now I got some power. Now I got some direction, right? Man, I don't know what's in the basement, but we're going to go down the steps and see what's in the basement. Turns out what's in the basement is really bad. It's messy. It's dirty. It's perverse. Right? We got shit down there that you can't talk about in a meeting or without making people very uncomfortable. And you certainly can't talk about it at church, and you certainly can't talk about it at Shabbat dinner. We rubbed against things and we touched things that people aren't supposed to rub against and they're not supposed to touch. And we did it regularly. And we found other people to do it with, right? There's a lot of shit down there in the basement, and there is mildew and there is rodent droppings for sure. This inventory process is deep and profound and ongoing, right? But that first initial cleanup is ugly. Now, most of us, or some of us at least, we get right down there in the thick of it and we sit down and we don't move and we stop cleaning. We don't leave the basement, but we don't keep cleaning up the mess. And we get really, 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 really miserable because who would want to sit down there in that stink, right? And finally someone says, man, just finish the fucking cleanup. You are going to love that basement once you do a little remodel. And so we trudge on through and we clean out and we bring someone down there and we say, this stuff is useless and this stuff was always useless and this stuff didn't even fit in the categories that they offered in 1935. And this stuff we have video of us doing, right? So that all gets worked out, and now the person we brought down into the basement says, you know what, take this to God, and we do. And then we say, wow. And what I'm describing is a process filled with self. It's almost all about self. This is the spiritual kindergarten of which I speak, right? And that leads us sometimes to think, and others of us to say, that we're part of a selfish program, which is not true in my experience. This is a selfless program, because after this kindergarten phase, when we do all this self work and we're just dancing with self and shimmying against self and wetting ourselves and doing whatever else we do, and we've given it to God and we fixed the stuff that we broke, which in many cases is a tremendous amount of stuff, then what we do is we keep the basement clean on an ongoing basis with the 10th and 11th steps, which are a combination, in my estimation, of both inventory and prayer and meditation and inventory. To call 10 an inventory step and 11 a prayer and meditation step simply because those are the words Bill used, I think is a mistake. And so what we do instead is we continue growing and applying more and more of this God to our life on a daily basis. And sometimes, it's enough to read the 24-hour day book on the toilet every morning for the rest of your life. Sometimes that's enough. Some people will proudly proclaim, I read my spiritual literature on the crapper every morning, and that's what I do. And that's great if that's what they do. And if that's all that they want, and if that's enough, and if that's fulfilling to them and overwhelming to them, fantastic. I'm not here to judge. And if I sound a little judgy, it's just because I'm a little judgy. But again, it's not my place to tell you that you can't read the entirety of your spiritual literature on the toilet every morning for the rest of your life. It's not my business. I'm simply here to tell you that wasn't my experience. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous 45 years ago. I was 16 years old. My name was Chris, and now it's Yisrael. I came to an Irish Italian. Marsh, stop. Marsh, they're not coming here. Stop. It's enough. Shh. I'm fighting a dog. I'm fighting a being whose brain is smaller than my fist. And I'm trying to engage them in a way that will look spiritual to you. That's the state of my spiritual life. I'm telling you this. I came to you an Irish, Italian, Catholic kid from Philadelphia. I sit before you an Orthodox Jew living in Jerusalem. I've lived in Israel for 25 years. I came here from Los Angeles when I had 20 years sober. That doesn't say anything except Reading the 24-hour-a-day book on the crapper every morning was not enough for me. I had to keep searching. My sponsor, when I had about 14 years of sobriety, 13 years of sobriety, somewhere in around there, said to me, I think you need to have a deeper, more authentic second step experience. Now, I don't remember the words that he used. If I had known I was going to tell this story for the rest of my life, I would have paid better attention. He just basically said, go out and get a better second step. Better sounds like a weird word to apply to the second step, but something that was more grabbing, captivating to me. Not to Tina in Ohio. My spiritual life doesn't have to make sense to Tina in Ohio, because Tina in Ohio is going to end this meeting and, be done with me. And Jan's been here several times to hear this diatribe of mine, and she laughs a lot, but she doesn't have to live my life either. None of you do. I do. So the specifics of my spiritual life aren't what's important, and please don't get caught up on them. They are only being given to explain to you, as it says on page 29, we hope that our discussion of our spiritual lives will not be embarrassing to you. I'm paraphrasing. I used to have the book memorized, and then I realized there's no need to memorize the book. It's already written down. So I don't have it memorized anymore, and I remember different things now, like to change my underwear and where are my keys and stuff like that. And the book is written down. And at the end of the page 29, I know it's page 29, it describes what I'm supposed to be doing here. Right? In the 5th chapter, it says I'm telling my story in a general way. That's part of what I'm doing here. But it also says that I'm here to share how I came to have a relationship with God. And it says, we hope that these personal accounts will not be seen as distasteful. I throw in all the peeing and the pooping to try and make it distasteful. But that's just my own personal fascination with silliness and walking down the line, and how inappropriate can I possibly be without, being censured. That's just my own stuff. What I'm really here to tell you is that I came here probably, I don't know, agnostic, atheist. I was a Catholic school kid in the middle of my junior year in high school. Did any of us believe in God then? I didn't believe in God. I believed in Catholic girls. I believed in school uniforms. I believed in skirts that were higher up than their knees. I believed in all that, whatever that is. I believed in the power of Jack Daniels and Southern Comfort and marijuana and LSD and the Beatles and the Grateful Dead and Woodstock and the powerful movements that were part of the 60s and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young's Ohio, and the fact that students had been, that's what I believed in. I certainly believed in something greater than myself. But it was chaotic, and it was certainly unprincipled, but not in a bad way. I'm not real big on bad and good. It just doesn't speak to me. Because look who thinks they're good now. And look who thinks they're bad now. Right? I'm a guide at Yad Vashem, the Israel's National Holocaust Museum, and I was explaining to 8th grade students this morning from Los Angeles, California, about a man named Raoul Wallenberg, who was writing visas for Jews to escape Hungary and live. And a man named Chinue Sugihara, who was doing the same thing in a place called Kovno in Lithuania. And they were both got in trouble for doing what they did. It was a classic case of, you'll see the meme these days. The people who caught Anne Frank in her hiding place were obeying the law, and the people who hid her were breaking the law. So good and bad and right and wrong doesn't interest me. What I'm looking to do here is to live comfortably, to not bump up against people, to not infuriate people that I think are righteous and all that stuff. And it's way more than a 40-minute conversation, and it's way deeper than spiritual kindergarten. I'm a committed member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a home group. I have a sponsor. I sponsor a bunch of guys. I'm imperfect at that. One of the most troubled members of AA that I worked with in a long time, I drove away because I couldn't stop yelling at him because he couldn't do what I thought he should do. And in the few instances that he did, I saw progress and he didn't. And I feel bad about that. And I'll try and fix that when I can. But I want you to know, I'm definitely committed. And I definitely think that the 12 steps of alcoholics in my life are one part of my spiritual growth. Now, again, only because we're talking about this as a topic, I don't talk about my religious life with my sponsees. I don't talk about what gets me off as a spiritual experience with my sponsees because it's not important. The results are not important. What's important is process. What's important is, am I acting to get out of self? I suffer from a disease that should not be called alcoholism. It should be called selfishness and self-centeredness. Alcohol was the solution, a spiritual solution. Literally, alcohol is spirits in Latin. It was a spiritual solution. And I used a lot of other chemicals that work a lot better and a lot faster and are available to children when alcohol isn't. And I took every one of them, and I would have taken more. And that's not an outside issue because I'm not AA. I'm a member of AA. And we're not speaking in public. We are in private. We are in the privacy of an AA meeting. So if I need to talk about drugs to not pick up a drink today, then that's what I need to talk about. And if I need to talk about anything else that makes you uncomfortable, I'm fucking sorry. But as a member of AA, I believe I have the right, and I believe you have the right, and that's why I'm talking about it. Because I obviously think I have the right, but I want you to know you have the right. In a meeting of AA, to talk about whatever you need to talk about. However that manifests, you have your 3 minutes. You have your little space. In Judaism, we call it the Dalet Amot, the 4 steps. That's my space. I'm not AA. I don't want Natasha to wear a MAGA hat or a Confederate flag or a, we burn the witches at Salem shirt because she's the chairperson. She's the representative, even here, of what is AA. But even if she did, that's still not speaking for AA. I don't want Natasha to go to the Guardian newspaper and say, you know who's at the meeting today? He's a nut job. He's a genocidal maniac. He lives in an apartheid state, and he's a fucking nut job. I don't want her to do that at the Guardian. If she wants to write me in the chat and say, you're a horrible human being and you live in a horrible place and you associate with horrible people, she's free to do that. I've been blasted in these last 18 months, not often, but a couple times, and told I was a despicable human being for where I've chosen to live my life and the people I've chosen to live my life and the government under which I've chosen to live my life and the fact that I've allowed my children to join the Israeli Defense Forces. Perfectly legitimate. If you need to do that, I prefer you not. I'd prefer you go, wow, that was amazing, man. If you want to know what to say in the sharing part of the meeting, I'll just say this. Start with wow. Say you're the greatest speaker I've ever heard. You're really amazing. You're spiritually connected in a way that very few other people I've ever met are. It's a shame you live so far away because I really wish we could spend more time together. That's what you should say. But if you need to tell me the other stuff, go for it. Because you also are a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous and get to say whatever. It's in the first tradition, not in this language. You are entitled to think, say, and do whatever the fuck you want. But try and remember you're here to be of maximum service to the alcoholics who still suffers. So I'm asking you now, and I'm talking to myself. I try not to be provocative as a normal, everyday member of the group. Because I'm also here to be of maximum service to the alcoholic who still suffers. Sometimes that's the guy with 1 day, and sometimes it's the guy with 35 years who's so crispy, he's going to fracture if he sits down. Right? We don't know who's the alcoholic. Yes, I agree. Most likely the alcoholic who's suffering the most is the newcomer, but not necessarily. So I have to keep my eyes open. I have to keep my heart open. And I have to be willing to see who's actually suffering here. It quite honestly could be me. I'm done, right, Natasha? I'm done. Time's up. How much time do I have roughly?
You've got another 10 minutes.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that was a mistake. That was a tactical error. Don't you think, Debbie? That was a tactical error on Natasha's part. She could have shut down this shit show right now, and she apparently doesn't think she's in charge. She thinks there might be a power greater than herself at work here, and I admire that in her. I don't think I'll need 10 minutes because I really thought I was winding down, but I will take a few more minutes to just kind of hammer home these ideas. It's not all one thing. Yes, the idea of the first tradition is common welfare, but that doesn't mean we get to squash our individuals and cookie cutter them into what we think an AA member should be. Because they have, and you can read this in the literature, it's really there, they have every right to be and to think and to act and to say who and what they are. And yes, the group is run, if I think I'm in charge, then I'm missing the point that we're being guided by a loving higher power. Whatever that means. And whatever I think it means, I can keep to myself so that the Christian who makes the mistake out of love and kindness to say, how was your Easter? I don't need to blast them with the fact that I don't think that's a thing. I can just say, I can say Passover was great. I can say my Easter was great. It just wasn't Easter. You know, but again, how do I, because what am I talking about now? God only knows. But what do I think I'm talking about now? The 12th tradition. Anonymity at the level of the group. My anonymity. How can I be as neutral as possible so that I can carry this message to as many people as possible? Maybe, Andrew, not when I'm speaking, because clearly I'm not so neutral. But when I'm just an average member, can I walk in as neutrally as possible? Can I stay available to as many people as possible? I want to tell a quick story. There was a man named Scott Redmond. Scott, amongst other things, used to say that alcoholism is contagious. We catch it through our ears. And that was my experience in the beginning, and it continues to be my experience now. What do I think Scott meant when he said that? That we hear others share their stories, and we go, ah, yes, me too. I must have this thing. That's how I catch alcoholism today. I don't care if, it's not a trick. There's not a secret test. We're not trying to push people away. We're trying to bring people in. So if you don't understand the difference between the phenomenon of craving and the spiritual malady and the physical allergy, then so fucking what? Okay? It's hard enough to get here. Right? Alcoholism, in my estimation, was first described in the story of Noah, which took place about 5,000 years ago. You know the guy who built the boat because God told him to and saved the world. I'm not speaking metaphorically save the world. He saved the world. Okay? You know the first thing Noah did when he got back from saving the world? Planted a vineyard and got drunk and naked in front of the kids. Now you may say, that's not alcoholism, Yisrael. That's just heavy drinking. You know how I know Noah was an alcoholic? Because after he got drunk and naked in front of the kids, you know what he did? He blamed the kids. Now that's alcoholism in my book. That was 5,000 years ago. And between then and now, with very few exceptions, there has been a period of 90 years that this program has existed, and there's been a wholesale answer for alcoholics to change their lives and not die of alcoholism. So in the last 5,000 years, there's been a 90-year window. And in that 90 years, the vast majority of alcoholics never even hear the words Alcoholics Anonymous, let alone attending a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, let alone getting sober as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous, let alone changing their lives forever. So when people do get here, stop fucking telling yourself that you're in charge of whether they belong here or not. They belong here because they said they belong here. And even if you think they're a sex addict, and even if you think they're a food addict, and even if you think they're only a heavy drinker, guess what? Get close, because I don't want to say it too loud. It's none of your fucking business. Your job, and your only job, is to welcome them here, to make them feel comfortable here. That's your job. Keep your fucking opinions to yourself and be of service. Smile, offer your phone number, take their phone number, get them to another meeting. You'd be surprised how many of them end up alcoholics. Nobody wants to be here. The literature says as much. We will do everything the book says to convince ourselves we don't belong here and therefore can drink. So if I come in here, excuse me, but I'm on a roll. If I come in here with my pants at my knees and tell you my problem is sex addiction and I'm a gaming addict, welcome me into the goddamn meeting, because in 6 months I very well could be an alcoholic. And if I'm not, we'll be fine. Nobody's trying to take over AA. There's not a consortium of heavy drinkers and food addicts who want to run this place. Let me lend you in on another piece of information. Nobody likes being here except us. Yes, this is the most spectacular, spiritual, wonderful place. Oh my God, everything's a miracle. Oh my God, I can't believe I got the smartest sponsor. Oh my God, I can't believe. Oh my God, it's all miraculous. Nobody feels that way except alcoholics. Nobody is trying to take over AA. Back to Scott for a minute. Scott and I used to belong, Scott belonged to a home group and I used to attend there often. It was a men's group and there was a crazy guy, crazy. Craziest person you ever met, 2 times crazier. And one day Scott and I were taking a walk and he said, crazy guy called me. And I said, really, what did he say? He said that he's covered his entire apartment with aluminum foil, including a duvet cover and a hat. And I laughed and Scott laughed and I said, why did he do that? And Scott said, because he said that aliens were coming to Earth and this would protect him from them. And we laughed some more and I said, what did you say to him? And he said, what I wanted to say to him was, crazy guy, if aliens could traverse the entire universe and they arrived at your house, why would they be stopped by a 32nd of an inch of aluminum foil? And we laughed, and I said, but what did you say to him? And he said, what I wanted to say to him was this. Crazy guy, if aliens could come to Earth, traversing the entire universe, and they got to Earth, and there were 7 billion human specimens for them to choose from, why would they choose you? And we laughed. And I said, but Scott, what did you say to him? And he said, I said to him, it sounds like a plan. And I said, really? I was stunned. I said, that's what you said to him? Why did you say that to him? And he said, because I had to leave him in a position where he felt he could call me again. That's what I believe our job is. How do I interact with my fellow members? How do I tell them what I believe is the truth? How do I direct them and guide them in a way if they want to be directed and guided? How do I share my experience in a way that brings them in instead of pushes them away? And leave them in a position where they feel they can call me again. And believe me, kids, that's not the work you do in kindergarten. Okay? This is far more than kindergarten. So yes, when we get here, it's spiritual kindergarten. But then it's not. And it's a whole lot more. And I wish you well on your journey. Thank you very much.